Absolutely. I was just happy to see Sarah back. Um, I really felt her absence season three. I felt that her return was important not only to my character but also to the show in general. And what can I say? The fans have spoken. Sarah returns. Maybe if it came to that, I think that there's definitely a price to be paid for this little adventure. Michael's hands are pretty filthy by this point in the series. It's become harder and harder to tell the good guys from the bad guys, and the question becomes: Is there? Can there be any sort of redemption for Michael? What would that look like? What would that take? And perhaps laying down his life so that someone else can live might be one answer to that question. Well, it keeps it interesting. First and foremost, I think, most other TV shows are in the habit of figuring out their winning formula and then beating it into the ground. Whereas we take what we already know works and toss it out the window at the start of every season, which I think is very bold and ambitious, and it certainly provides a new playground for the actors. That said, I've been more comfortable with some seasons than others. My favorites so far have been 1 and 3, because I actually think that my character works best behind bars, with very real, physical, deadly obstacles to surmount. Whereas second season was a total change of pace and a real downshift for me, and was one of my least favorite seasons, because it felt as though my character was literally and figuratively riding shotgun, much more reactive than active, and that can be frustrating. But like I said, it's most important for a show that's running 67 episodes at this point to keep it as fresh and exciting for the actors as possible. It's finally time to take on the puppet master. I think at this point we've battled many serious adversaries, Gretchen B, Agent Kellerman, et cetera, et cetera. Michael season 2 had that great face to face with the President of the United States, and you really thought that this was going to be the end of the journey. Turns out someone else was pulling the strings, and in many ways they had to go back to square one. And I think what the team realizes, Michael, Lincoln, Sara, etc., is that they can no longer flee. It's time to stand and fight. It's time to take on the puppet master and really put this whole conspiracy thing to bed, if possible. Excellent. I think it was at some point during the strike that I started hearing rumors that Sara was returning, that the fans were organizing write-ins and petitions, and I think that's emblematic of where we are in terms of television and the media. It's very much a back and forth conversation between the fans and the writers, between the fans and the powers that be, and their opinions, especially when expressed online or via correspondence, are important and are taken into consideration. You know what? I think that we address it as plausibly as possible. It helps that the show is kind of fantastic, and I feel like we've gotten away with worse.
Right.
But at the same time, we do provide an explanation, and we don't tease the audience. It's not a flash of Sarah's ponytail disappearing down an alley for the first 8 episodes. Everyone wondering when she'll actually make a face-to-face with Michael. She's back, first episode. Michael and Sara reunited, and then the gang hits the ground running because there's work to do. The tattoo is addressed pretty definitively in the very first episode. It's funny, it was a fan favorite first season, but then Michael escaped, mission accomplished, and suddenly it was just something that kind of had to be born, rather than something that could be used as a plot device. And that resulted in me in Dallas in 120-degree heat wearing long-sleeve shirts because we're still pretending that I actually have the damn thing on. I appreciated the tattoo, and I think it's addressed in the first episode of season 4 as something that's kind of emblematic of Michael's experience. That this is an experience that has left its mark. It's not something that can be easily washed off. And it speaks to the fact that Michael is now a changed man, inside and out. You know what? I appreciated the fact that I had to wear long sleeve shirts, in that it upped the sweat factor in Dallas, and that was, I think, an important part of the look of the show, showing how hot and uncomfortable it was supposed to be in this Panamanian prison. But I am looking forward to rolling my sleeves up. I have loved doing it. I think once Prison Break comes to an end, I'm not going to jump into the next Bourne Supremacy franchise. And I should be so lucky, actually. It is important to kind of balance out the intensity of the work that we do with some humor, and we try to keep the mood on the set as light as possible. I've also become a big fan of The Family Guy and American Dad, Reno 911, The Office, the British version and the American version, just because at the end of the day, after shooting all these scenes where I literally have a gun pointed at my head, it's important to come home and unwind with something that is the polar opposite of where you've just come from. And as far as projects post-Prison Break, I'd love to be involved in like a romantic comedy or something, really change it up if possible. Michael's great. I mean, he oozes character. There's character to spare where he's concerned. And his role is a pivotal one this season because he is our boss, in effect. He is sympathetic, and yet there's supposed to be something a little bit off about him. And that, of course, comes to a head, I think, later in the season. And I think Michael pulls that off beautifully. That's a good question. The good news is that characters on Prison Break tend to heal very, very quickly. It's quite possible to be shot in one scene and, sprinting across a cornfield the very next.
There you go, okay.
So the precedent has been established, but I did have my concerns about the tattoo. It was a laborious process, putting that thing on throughout seasons 1 and parts of 2. And I was interested in sort of addressing it. I knew it was this open-ended question. The fans were wondering when it would come back, how it would come back. I knew that it probably wouldn't really fit into the plot at this point. So I went to the writers and said, how can we really address this issue in a way that feels satisfying and gives some closure to people who were constantly on the lookout for it? We'll see. I kind of like it this short. It's pretty low maintenance. But the good news is, if I ever had any concerns about being typecast as Michael Scofield, only identified with this character forever after, because the shaved head is such an iconic part of the character, that distancing myself from it might be easier than it might otherwise be, just because all I'd have to do is let my hair grow out.